Okay, this is chapter two. And chapter two, the title is Respect Who You Are. And I broke this one up into two parts. So this is part one of chapter two. Oh, I got to put my glasses on since I can't see without them. All right. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong or had an experience where you didn't feel like you were part of the family? Have you ever longed to feel reassured that you were wanted or loved? Growing up, I felt both of these. I did never feel close to my mom. She was sick, tired, angry, and often absent emotionally as well as physically. My parents divorced when I was 7, and I remember watching my dad packing his things and driving away and feeling completely abandoned. My mom worked and went to school, so my older brother and I were alone a lot. Truthfully, part of me preferred being alone because I was afraid of my mom and spent much of my life walking on eggshells when she was around to make sure I didn't upset her. Yet another part of me yearned for her love and acceptance. I needed her to hold me and comfort me, but she wasn't equipped for that. I didn't feel emotionally safe with her, and yet I craved a more solid sense of belonging and connection. My mom loved art, ballet, classical music, psychology, and philosophy. She hated the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or any other organized religion. She didn't like to play and detested all team sports. Participating in or talking about those things wasn't okay at my house. I loved art and philosophy, but really I was a typical tomboy. I loved being outside, catching frogs and snakes, hunting varmints, reading mysteries, playing football, basketball, and night games. I also loved the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and how safe and peaceful I felt at church. What I really wanted was to live with my dad and stepmom. I felt safe with them. There I could be a kid and do the things I loved with people I loved. During my young years, I was in constant conflict between trying to be and do what my mom expected and what I felt drawn to and loved. There's definitely a disconnect between those two. I was afraid and anxious much of the time. I was always worrying about saying or doing the wrong thing in front of my mother, and secretly, I was finding ways to play and do things I loved without getting in trouble. Looking back, I had learned very good coping skills of being chameleon-like. In one home, I was one person, and in another home, I was a different person, never really feeling safe to be myself. Constantly betraying parts of me so I could feel accepted and disconnecting with other parts of me so as not to feel hurt was my normal. This is a common experience for children in divorced families, large families, or maybe all families. What was true for you growing up? Did you feel seen, loved, heard, or accepted? My anxiety became an element of my identity. I didn't even know or recognize it was anxiety. I just felt off, alone, and wanting for something, but I was never really sure what was missing. Then, when I was about 13, everything grew worse. My mom told me my dad wasn't my biological father. She'd had a relationship with her boss and had gotten pregnant. My dad knew of her infidelity, but claimed me as his own, even signing the birth certificate, though he wasn't my biological father. They kept it a secret from everyone. My mom told me I also had to keep it a secret. I'll never forget that conversation. My mom gushed about how much she had loved this other man and how wonderful he was. All I could think about was the only dad I had ever known, the one I felt safe and secure with. I wondered if I was going to lose him. My body shook with the growing panic I began to feel inside as my world unraveled for a second time. Everything began to feel and seem different. I couldn't ask my dad or stepmom about it. I couldn't talk to anyone because I had been sworn to secrecy. But all I wanted to do was desperately cling to my dad and belong with him. A year or so later, in a fit of anger, mom told me my dad didn't really love me. She said he was only good to you to get back at me for being unfaithful. I think she really believed it, but sadly, so did I. My 14-year-old brain began to process the world through the lens of, I truly am not wanted or loved. I really don't belong. This was also seared into my heart as part of my identity. I decided I had better quit wishing I lived at my dad's house and make my life work with the one person I didn't want to belong to, my mom. I closed off the parts of me that loved sports, being outdoors, and going to church. I solidified the belief that my worth came from getting my mom's approval, and I tried to focus more on making her happy and ensuring that she and everybody around me didn't regret my existence. Eventually, I took that identity into my marriage and focused my efforts on making my husband happy in order to prove my worth and earn his love. Do you struggle with beliefs formed in childhood that plagued you as an adult? I certainly do. Struggling with my identity, I became obsessed with the concept of nature versus nurture. I desperately wanted to believe the nurture side, that I was like the dad who raised me, and that's where I belonged. At the same time, there were physical traits, ideas, and things I loved and cared about that really didn't fit anywhere. As much as I wanted to deny those inherent parts of me out of loyalty to my dad, they were still parts of me that I couldn't just cast aside. But oh, that nature part. I can't even begin to explain the cost of disowning part of myself and feeling like I didn't belong. Most importantly, this belief evolved into sacrificing all of myself to the needs, wants, and desires of my husband, children, family, and career. The price I was paying to meet the demands of others became too high and overwhelming. The physical and mental toll was tremendous. Eventually, I began to lose the respect of myself and those close to me. I had no choice but to begin investing in my mental health and start healing the deep wounds of my past. Clearing these wounds helped build my confidence. As I grew more confident, it gradually began to impact those around me in good ways, but also in ways that weren't so good. The healthier I became, the more I started giving myself a voice and speaking up. I began to share my birth story. I began to share my self doubt and insecurities with my family and friends. Gradually, the healing took hold. Still, I struggled for many years with a lost sense of belonging. It was heightened by the fact I didn't have a strong relationship with my Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. Sadly, I was denying not only myself and my family, but the world too, from the full potential of my spiritual, innate, and learned gifts and talents. I unconsciously chose to play small and stay safe. Potentially, I could have lived the rest of my life that way, as many do. But another thing happened with my healing. The further I went into it, the more I realized my husband and I had very different beliefs and values. My marriage ultimately ended in my husband's betrayal, and I lost any semblance of belonging I may have had. With nothing left to lose, I turned back to my Heavenly Father. Through the course of rebuilding this relationship with God, I got my patriarchal blessing. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, I met the stake patriarch in his home. He knew nothing about me, but as he laid his hands on my head, he gave me the most beautiful blessing of love and belonging I could have ever asked for. When he said the words, "You are not here by mistake," tears streamed down my face, releasing years of feeling like I didn't belong. I sobbed as I let go of the heartache, the pain, and the idea that I was an unwanted accident. I knew this was my Heavenly Father speaking to me. Finally, I began to realize and own the beautiful blessings I had been given at birth by my Father in heaven, a loving earthly dad. I had not only received my nurtured and learned qualities, but I had also inherited gifts and talents from my biological father. My blessing created the awareness I needed to weave everything together. With time and a lot of deep work, I began to see myself as a beautiful woven tapestry of inherited spiritual and learned threads. Seeing myself in this way isn't always easy. If I'm being completely honest, belonging is still a struggle for me. I can get triggered by the smallest hint of rejection or discord and get pulled back into feeling insecure. The beautiful thing is, now I recognize it more quickly and I can course correct. Perhaps my insecurity is the view from the backside of my tapestry, where all I see is the jumble of multicolored thread going every which direction. Here it's messy and nothing seems to make sense. Yet God gave me the gift of seeing His hand in my life. And all I have to do is turn my tapestry over to see the rich textures and deep colors, creating a pattern of astonishing beauty and art. That is my tapestry, the one I have grown to love and respect, because ultimately I know I belong to Him and am a child of God. That is my true identity. My birth story and experiences growing up highlighted four major things I had to learn to foster a strong sense of belonging. Number one, knowing and embracing my God-given identity increases my strength and power. Two, a healthy sense of self-worth builds my confidence and self-esteem. Three, having the means to identify false beliefs and work through them provides the ability to put me back on track when I am thrown off course. And four, living in alignment with my true identity helps me chart new paths to grow. Why does knowing our identity make such a critical difference? Knowing our true divinity is a critical part of self-worth. This identity gives us a stronger sense of purpose and hope. Expanding on the idea of turning to God from chapter 1, we must also understand how significant feeling God's connection is for us. This next section is about identity. Everyone has a deep need for God's connection, but feelings of disconnection run deep within us because we are His children and have been separated from our heavenly parents. This desire to feel connected is innate, a sort of homing beacon implanted in every human being. It is a state of unrest that makes us long for home, our heavenly home. In Carrie Milstein's book, The Easter Connection, he says, I came to realize that there is some part of all of us that has experienced a deep and painful separation, our separation from God. This is the basic injury experienced by all humanity. No matter how unhappy and well and whole we are, we still walk around with a deep wound that affects us, whether we realize it or not. There is a rift in our souls because there is a fracture in the most important relationship we have ever had. From the beginning of our fallen world, we have had to deal with a shattering separation, a loss so great that it changes our natures and shapes our souls. The only way to be healed from this, our most primal wound, is to be reunified with God. This injury was experienced by everyone, but its intensity can be increased if we did not grow up in a home where we felt loved, secure, or safe. For many people, this craving lies within their hearts as a subconscious emptiness as they search for meaning or purpose in all the wrong places. When we suffer from feeling this lack, it often leads to looking for artificial ways to satisfy the craving, like drugs, pornography, eating, social media, binge watching TV, even unhealthy relationships. This is covered in more detail in future chapters, but suffice to say, when the craving goes unsatisfied, it can put us in a very dark and lonely place. While the pain of this separation wound will be there until we are reunited with God, at times it feels more raw, vulnerable, and unbearable than other times. Satan loves for us to feel vulnerable in this way. Sherry Dew said, quote, Satan knows how spiritually potent the knowledge of our divine identity is. He hates women and men of the noble birthright. Thus, it should not surprise us that the master of deceit is going all out to keep us from comprehending the majesty of who we are. He offers an array of seductive but sorry substitutes, hoping to preoccupy us with the world's artificial identifiers. Clearly, Satan wants us to see ourselves as the world sees us, not as the Lord sees us, because the world's mirror, like a circus mirror in which a 5-foot 10-inch woman appears 2 feet tall, distorts and minimizes us. Satan tells us we're not good enough, not smart enough, not thin enough, not cute enough, not clever enough, not anything enough. And that is a big, fat, devilish lie. End quote. As we grow up, we develop many wounds. Like my story, all of us have stories and experiences that have shaped us. Many are of hardships and heartaches, while others are of joy, passion, and victory. With each experience, we formulate supportive or sometimes limiting beliefs about ourselves and others. This results in us labeling ourselves, creating our worldly identity, and shaping how we experience others in our world. Often these stories, coupled with fear, pull us away from our divine identity. These lies and limiting beliefs are fodder for Satan, getting in our way of living up to our full divine potential. Our identity shapes the way we act and behave throughout life. It is the definition of ourselves. It affects everything, what we think about, what we're willing to try, what we appreciate, what risks we'll take, or if we will succeed or fail. This is why knowing our true identity and feeling a strong sense of belonging deep within our subconscious is so critical. In my case, I did not feel secure, emotionally safe as a child. I formulated some very false beliefs and stories about myself and others that plagued me for most of my adult life. Research has shown abandonment is one of the only biological fears humans are born with. When an infant fears being abandoned, it increases their stress hormone, cortisol, and puts them into a mode of fight, flight, or fright, which is freeze. My fear of abandonment and the belief I am not wanted was deeply entrenched early in life and reinforced multiple times through my lived experiences. Adopted children or children in homes where one parent is absent are more likely to experience this abandoned feeling. Growing up in a home of neglect or abuse also contributes. Children in these situations typically don't develop a sense of secure attachment. They often do not learn coping skills or how to self-soothe. This can create what is commonly referred to as an attachment wound. The negative earthly experiences, coupled with the separation from their heavenly parents, if not addressed, can become overwhelming and damage the ability to feel love and belonging for the rest of their lives. Children who become adults with attachment wounds typically have trouble trusting others, including God. Yet we have the means here on earth to heal this spiritual trauma and soothe our soul. Part of our earthly mission is to develop the capability to heal our attachment wounds and increase our potential for more secure attachment so we can develop healthier relationships. It starts with building a secure relationship with God and ourselves. In turn, we can draw strength and power from this foundational relationship to address other wounds. On top of this, we have the opportunity to make and keep covenants in the temple to deepen this relationship with God and further increase our power. The absolute truth is we all have a divine identity. We are children of God. This is at the core of our being, our real self. As covered in chapter 1, God is waiting on us to reach out. If we ask Him, He will help us build our trust in Him and feel His connection. He has provided the lovely gift of the Holy Ghost to ensure we are not completely cut off from heavenly parents. We have to learn how to attune ourselves to the Spirit and foster this connection to home, our true identity, and our heavenly parents. Our self-worth. Building this foundation helped me uncover a significant false belief that plagued me. The story I was telling myself was I had to earn my worth in order to belong to my family. This belief was so entrenched that I abandoned my needs, wants, and desires, thinking that satisfying the needs of others was more important. At the root of the story was, I am not lovable unless I am earning my worth, so my needs aren't worthy of even my attention. My job is to do everything possible to make those around me happy. This belief is not okay on so many levels. First, I don't have the power to control how others feel. No one does. We can't make people love us, and we are not responsible for how someone else feels. Sure, we can influence them, but ultimately it is up to each individual to decide how they feel. Second, it caused me to develop all kinds of unhealthy behaviors to protect myself. These behaviors caused me to mentally and physically withdraw from the world. Third, ignoring my own needs was a tremendous betrayal of myself. This betrayal of myself taught everyone close to me that I wasn't worthy of their respect. Ironically, I didn't realize this disregard of myself was a form of pride and a sin. It was my ego protecting me. In the seminal talk, Beware of Pride by Ezra Taft Benson, he stated, quote, "The proud depend upon the world to tell them whether they have value or not. Their self-esteem is determined by whether they are judged to be on the ladders of worldly success." End quote. My self-betrayal of depending on the world for my significance ultimately resulted in betraying God and my divine purpose here on earth. Take a moment and think about what gives you feelings of self-worth. Get a piece of paper or the worksheet at the end of the chapter and draw a circle. Now make a pie section proportionate to how much of your self-worth comes from each of the following: your career, your appearance, your children and family, their accomplishments, your education or certifications, your friends, your wealth and assets, your community connections, whatever it may be that helps you derive worth. Then look at your circle and evaluate how much is left to attribute to self-worth for simply being in existence. The ultimate goal is to truly embed within your body, mind, heart, and spirit the knowledge that 100% of your worth is from being a divine child of God and to be able to see yourself as your Heavenly Father does. Wounds and false stories block the ability to feel the Spirit and see ourselves as He does. There are several things we can do to bolster our confidence and embrace our divine worth and self-esteem as a God-given gift we are born with. Self-esteem is rooted in knowing our worth. Our upbringing, our culture, and our personal experiences can significantly impact our perception of self. Our human minds are conditioned to find meaning in our experience and drive us to make decisions about them. These decisions form the beliefs about ourselves and can significantly impact our view of our self-worth and confidence. Self-beliefs can be put on a spectrum where one extreme is arrogance, indifference, or haughty self-righteousness, and the other extreme is feeling like a victim or feeling inadequate and not good enough, resulting in a preoccupation with our weaknesses. Both ends of the spectrum are based in fear and pride. Both ends are overly focused on external opinions and comparisons. They are an attempt of the ego to protect us from feeling discomfort and to keep us emotionally safe. Except they also separate us from our true spirit and from God. The good news is there is a middle. The middle of the spectrum is balanced and spiritually based in the knowledge of our divine identity and our worth as children of God. Satan works diligently at both ends of the spectrum to keep us from moving toward the middle. Knowing our divine worth is foundational to having a healthy self-esteem and being self-confident. Staying in the middle of the spectrum requires us to humble ourselves regularly in order to recognize our weakness and allow God to make us strong. We've been promised that God's grace will make us strong in Ether 12:27. If men come unto me, I will show unto them their weakness. I give unto men weakness that they may be humble. And my grace is sufficient for all men that humble themselves before me. For if they humble themselves before me and have faith in me, then will I make weak things become strong unto them. When we accept that God made us powerless and we must cleave unto him, he can work his mighty miracles in our lives. Working with God to make us stronger helps us build the skills and abilities to grow our confidence and own our innate self-worth. Learning my true worth required me to have the courage to take responsibility, face my past, and identify my weaknesses so I could work with God to heal those wounds and become whole. For some like me and many of my clients, this requires the courage to let go of the false beliefs by doing some very deep healing work. This work is continuous, and no amount of healing and awareness can completely immune us. The good news is this continuous work draws us closer and closer to God. Beliefs and doing the deep work. Frequently, the belief I am not good enough shows up in all kinds of different ways for many of us. Feeling not enough is an epidemic on our planet. But this is a false story. First, it implies a comparison to an ideal that doesn't even exist. We are all imperfect, and also we are good enough. These false beliefs have to be eliminated so we can connect to God and our true self, minus all the false ideas formed by our egos. The false beliefs and stories do not have to be permanent within us. I was convinced of this after doing research on neuroplasticity, which is the brain and nervous system's ability to change in response to experience. Our brains are changing until the day we die. Think of that. We have the ability to alter any limiting beliefs or unwanted behaviors at any stage of life. We can teach an old dog new tricks. Awareness is the first step in making a change. I can't express how critical it is to question any belief you may have formed. Take some time to ponder the stories and beliefs you have formed. Think of yourself as a beautiful garden. Spend a few minutes and try visualizing your garden. Get creative and have some fun with this by drawing your beautiful garden and labeling things. Or you can use the worksheet at the back of the book and think about what beautiful plants, flowers, and trees are in your personal garden. There can be all kinds of plants and trees in the form of talents, spiritual gifts, strengths, and abilities. Then consider there are also weeds that can choke out the beauty. Some of the plants and trees may be suffering from illness, making the flowers or fruits produced less healthy. The garden is your overall well-being. Sometimes it can be a challenge to differentiate between weeds and flowers. Often, what may have been a flower in one season of life is now acting as a weed and choking out other beautiful plants in another season of life. There are many places in the scriptures that help us to better understand this concept. In a way, this exercise is separating the wheat from the tares within ourselves. We know we are on the right track when a belief is bearing good fruit. Instead of applying the wheat and tares parable by comparing yourself to others, take time to consider the ideas and beliefs within yourself and determine which ones are bearing good fruit. In Psalms 1:3, it says, "And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper." Ask what ideas and beliefs are helping you to spiritually, mentally, and physically prosper right now. Are you getting nurtured by the water of God? These are the flowers or fruit you want in your garden. In the parable of the sower, Matthew 13:19-23, it stresses that as we focus our attention on God, our lives will bear fruit. It also reminds us that as we hear or observe the word of the world, and if that is where we focus, it will not be fruitful. Granted, sometimes we have absorbed the words of the world when we were innocent children, and false beliefs are developed unknowingly. The good news is we don't have to hold on to them. I would invite you to consider that as we become adults and we learn more, it is an opportunity to humble ourselves, identify these beliefs, and solve them in a manner commensurate with God's plan for us. Now consider what may be getting in your way of growing and bearing fruit. These are the weeds choking out the beauty of well-being and your ability to be fruitful. To illustrate this, review the diagram provided showing an example of an unhealthy belief or weed. There may be a variety of weeds where each weed is a problem, an issue, or a pattern causing you struggle. The leaves and stem of the weed are emotions and thoughts. The root bulb is a core belief about yourself or others. Core beliefs are often phrased as an absolute. The root are specific events. The root hairs are event details or aspects that feed or contribute to the core belief. For example, you may have a weed called, quote, "I can't have stable romantic relationships." The leaves would be sadness, anxiety, the thought, "People I love leave me," or anger. The root bulb is the limiting core belief, "I am not lovable." Specific events or the roots feeding into the bulb would be, "My father left when I was 7. I caught a friend with my husband when I was 30. No one came to change and feed me in my crib when I was crying." The aspects or root hairs of these events are sensory details such as seeing a baby blanket similar to the ones in my crib, smelling the perfume of the other woman with my husband, feeling the grass on my feet as I watch my dad drive away, etc. If we get rid of a weed by breaking it off, the garden will look nice for a while. But if the root is still there, the weed will eventually grow back. It requires a lot of maintenance, time, and energy to keep breaking off a weed every time it grows back. This is true for us as well. Our weeds often show up as a repeating pattern. In the example above, the pattern would show up as multiple abusive or negative relationships, one after another. It isn't until we are able to get to the core belief, process it properly, and transform it that we can make room for another, healthier pattern or plant to take its place in our garden of well-being. A good approach to discovering a root cause is asking why at least 5 times. Using our current example of, "I don't have healthy romantic relationships," it may start with feeling anxious. Then it may go something like this: "Why am I feeling anxious?" Answer: "Because I'm going to get hurt in this relationship." Second why: "Why will I get hurt?" Answer: "Because people I love always leave me." Third why: Why do they always leave? Answer, because I am not worth staying for. Fourth, why am I not worth staying for? Answer, because I'm not a joy to be around just by being me. They leave unless I'm doing something to make them happy. Fifth why. Why aren't you a pleasure to be around? Answer, because I am not lovable. When uncovering a core belief, oftentimes events supporting the belief will automatically come to mind. Go with whatever comes up and write it down so you can identify the roots and the root hairs. It's important to trust what surfaces or comes to mind, even if it doesn't seem to make sense. Often, these beliefs were formed at a young age and when the thinking part of the brain wasn't fully functioning. So, even though it may seem silly now to your adult, more knowledgeable self, that wasn't the case for you at the time, your young self, when you experienced it. Finally, identifying the root hairs are vital to the healing process. Here is why. Our bodies and brains are incredibly powerful. Remember from chapter 1, our body responds biologically to trauma. The body was designed to thrive in conditions where homeostasis is maintained. When we experience negative events or trauma, we are not in this well-balanced state. Our bodies kick into action and start crisis management to get us back to homeostasis. The idea is that when we are in homeostasis and everything is in balance, we are physically and emotionally safe. So when the body senses a potential crisis or uncertainty, it releases hormones to put us into stress, so we will take action. It turns off the analyzing, rational parts of the brain. The goal, usually in our subconscious, is to cause quick reactions like running away or freezing in place or whatever is necessary to get into a safe place with feelings of equilibrium. It is important to note all negative experiences don't result in a traumatic event. Usually, if one of 4 characteristics is met in your psyche, then it might be encoded as a traumatic event because you weren't able to completely process through what happened. The 4 characteristics are: 1, if the event is perceived as a threat to your survival. 2, you felt isolated and alone in your suffering. 3, you overwhelmed your coping capacity. Or 4, your expectations were violated. During this heightened state, our brains are recording every little detail of our experience through all of our senses. This is done to protect us from the future events that might put us in similar harm. So if ever we get in a similar situation, the alarm bells will sound and invoke our internal crisis management system again. Using the example above, this could play out one day, years later, when the person in our example sees a similar baby blanket and suddenly begins having a panic attack. To others, this seems crazy or irrational, and maybe even to the person who experienced it. She doesn't remember being neglected as a baby, but the brain has recorded every aspect and subconsciously recalls that a baby blanket is a sign of being neglected or left alone. This is how experiences become imprinted in our body, mind, and heart. Until we recognize the fear and can reteach our brain and body that the blanket isn't a sign of danger, this fear may continue to resurface. Taking all of this into consideration, now take some time to identify the weeds in your garden and map out the elements using the PDF provided. Draw your own or put it in a table form. Set the goal to work toward identifying root causes, thinking about this beautiful one-liner from Rumi. Quote, maybe you are searching among the branches for what only appears in the roots, end quote. Recognizing a limiting belief formed from a negative experience is a great first step to healing wounds. Ideally, we want to feel a sense of comfort and safety when we think of all the things on our chart. We have the ability to identify and consider each of our beliefs and decide if it is supporting us or getting in our way and holding us back. Okay, that is the end of part 1 of chapter 2. So what I would say is take some time, use the worksheets provided, and I even gave you a little bit of a healing meditation to listen to. Think about what are some of the things that you have maybe formed some limiting beliefs about, and write those down, and then we'll go to part 2 of this chapter. Thanks so much.